It's a weekly radio show heard on over 1,000 radio stations across the world. You talk about reach and impact and platform. That is amazing, especially when you consider the topic that we're talking about. You can find out more about her. Just go to olivetreeviews.org. Be sure to write that down and check it out. If by chance you're one of the few people who has not heard of her and her ministry, write that down. And one quick thing before we bring Jan in and welcome her is we want to make sure we thank Harvest House Publishers for sponsoring this and helping with the post-production and making sure that we get this amazing message out there to people. So Jan, welcome once again to the Prophecy Pros podcast.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, it's been a while since we had Jan on, and just as the Lord would have it, when we're recording this and when it releases is going to coincide with when a very impactful summer newsletter that Jan is putting out is going to release. And there's an article in there that we got lucky to get an early look at that really gives a snapshot of kind of a wake-up call for where we are in 2024. And brother, we're only 6 months in.
It's amazing. It is incredible. I mean, so much is happening, and you look at what's been going on, the ongoing war in Israel, and really the fallout from that. I would say the false fallout, if you will, here in America with what's been going on with anti-Semitism and the explosion of hatred towards Israel. So perhaps we should touch on that today as well.
Yeah, matter of fact, we'll start there. That's her number one in this article. It's Israel is alone. Jan, explain that a little bit. What you mean? We all know that eyes have been on Israel. We did a whole season last season on Israel. But I love how you encapsulated what's going on with those simple 3 words, Israel is alone.
Yeah, well, what I tried to do, Jeff and Todd, is sort of take 10 points that sort of remind everyone, starting with me, that, as I think I titled the article, we're running out of time. Time is winding down so fast. And I mean, the Lord is gracious enough to send us markers along the way that can remind us, just what in the world is going on, and take a look at it. And once you analyze it biblically, you're reminded that God has an outline in the Bible which no other faith has. Buddha doesn't have it. Islam doesn't have it, but the God of the Bible has a complete outline for things to come. And so based on that, I just took 10 observations for right now today that remind us that we are running out of time. And I think the first and foremost, and even The Economist magazine had a front cover story. This was probably, it could have been a month ago now, even 6 weeks ago. Israel alone with an Israeli flag blowing somewhere in an Israeli desert, just a forlorn looking picture. And yet it still said a lot that Israel has been dumped by almost every country in the world as far as a partner, as far as an ally. The rest of the world, including America, is embarrassed by Israel, and thus she's standing alone. I'm sure both of you have made the same observation.
Yeah, it's been amazing to see how America in particular, who traditionally has been her ally through thick and thin, even with some bumps in the road. But lately, where literally America, the choices that our leadership is making is literally abandoning Israel, but at the same time claiming to support Israel, funding both sides of the war. I mean, it's schizophrenic and it's evil.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a partial fulfillment of Zechariah 12, where she is abandoned. Now that's going to happen much more so down the road, but we're seeing an early fulfillment of that. And I think if we were to really put our minds to it today, there'll probably be a little more minor nations that are remaining really loyal to her, but they're probably inconsequential. But imagine how Israel's feeling right now. I can't, quite frankly.
Yeah.
It is. It's mind-blowing. If you take any other nation on the planet that was attacked so brutally and so barbarically, and with such incredible depravity that is really inappropriate to even talk about in public, any other nation in the world would have the entire global community
Right.
coming at their aid. And yet here we are being the greatest ally of Israel, and we are actually defending the hatred on campuses across our nation. And Jan, to me, it really is, it almost like, it feels like you're waking up in an alternate reality at times where you're going, is this really happening? Are we really promoting this? Are we defending this? Or are we in our administration, are we allowing this to take place and then making threats against Israel to not help her in her defense against herself? And then the International Criminal Court calling for Netanyahu to be prosecuted for war crimes? I mean, it's like black is white, white is dark is light. It's Isaiah 5:20, calling evil good and good evil.
Welcome to the last days. That's the alternate reality, as we're in the last days.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does speak, just real quickly, to the amount of last days deception that we would anticipate our enemy to launch in the last days. He's got to get people under a deception, under a delusion, so that they can receive what is false. That's exactly, as you said, ramping up. We're ramping up to that 2 Thessalonians 2, where ultimately God will send the delusion himself. But certainly we're seeing it. And who are the voices that are going to stand up and say what is true and right and biblical? It's only Bible-believing Christians, those who really understand Bible prophecy.
And when we're gone, it'll be a mess. No truth tellers.
That's right.
That's right. The restrainer will be out of here. It's all the more important for us to remember we're salt and light. We're holding back a lot of evil. We may feel like lone voices, but we've got to stand tall and we've got to stand strong. Jan, one thing I notice as I look over this list is really, honestly, and hopefully we'll have time to at least mention all 10 of them, if not a few of them, but all of them, there's a few of them that were mildly in play 10 or 20 years ago, but many of these are new things and definitely on a new level. For example, one of them, number 4 that you have here is, you titled it, "The World is Leaderless. The world is leaderless." Talk about that for a moment, if you would.
Well, I think the world is used to America being the powerhouse, the primary leader of the whole globe. And obviously, because of a certain election, that America fell off the chart. I mean, right now we're inconsequential, and the world knows it. And tragically, gentlemen, there's a very dark side to that. Thousands and maybe millions, who knows, of people have died, particularly in a couple of conflicts, not the least of which is Ukraine. Vladimir Putin would not have launched that attack had America been really strong. He would have known that the free world, led by America, would have pushed him back and not allowed that to happen. But he knew nothing was going to happen, and thus very innocent people have died. They've died, obviously, in the Israel-Gaza, Hezbollah, and that's about to broaden. I think we all know it. That's going to get more complicated. First of all, Israel's going to have to go into Lebanon, and already people have died, and more are going to die. So this is the very tragic side of the world lacking a leader. I think the intriguing side is those same people who have always looked at America and relied on America as being the leader, now they've stepped back and they've kind of said, well, I guess we'll have to take whoever comes along because America's kind of checked out. Well, we know who's coming along, and hopefully believers will be gone, though who knows, maybe we'll see a run-up, maybe we'll see someone anointed, a leader in Europe, head of an EU or something, but we don't know. We just know that there's coming a leader, a very charismatic man with a plan who will, I call him Mr. Fix-It. He's waiting in the wings.
Yeah, and in light of that, Jan, you talk about the fact that we're in a rush to a global government because the calls for a global governance system that really began ramping up during COVID, because guess what? We have this common enemy out there called the virus, and so we all have to come together and be one neighborhood. So talk about how this coming election, because all elections obviously are important, but regardless of the outcome of the election, how does this global government play into what happens in America during the election. Is there going to be impedance possibly? Is there going to be an obstacle in the way if somebody wins? And if someone doesn't win, is there going to be more of a free flow and an acceptance of this coming global government?
Well, I did an interview this morning talking a little bit about the World Health Organization. Now, you hear that term and people say, well, big deal. Who cares about the World Health Organization? But I think we need to care about the World Health Organization because they are trying to unite the world, so to speak, under health concerns. And they've made some accomplishments, and I think we need to keep our eyes on, it's called WHO, WHO. The leader right now is a former terrorist, Tedros Ghebreyesus. Donald Trump pulled America out of WHO in 2020. Mr. Biden went right back in, and the World Health Organization is trying to unite the world under, let's just call it pandemic health. And after COVID, who isn't going to listen with some interest to anybody who's going to talk about protecting everyone's health, as WHO will come forth and do? But just keep in mind, your audience keep in mind that ultimately the World Health Organization wants to be a sort of a leader of the whole world, in essence, a second United Nations. And because of people's passion to stay well, I think they might allow the World Health Organization to do that. And again, America back in it for now. And again, this isn't necessarily an election appeal to elect a certain candidate, but if Donald Trump were to get in, he said he will pull out of that organization again, which I do think is the proper thing to do.
Yeah. And with that, Jan, just one quick comment. There tends to be, see if you agree with this or not, but in terms of the ramping up and prophecies coming together, and one of them obviously is a global government, do you see sometimes an ebb and a flow in the degree of severity or proximity to certain prophecies coming into fruition? In other words, there's a time when things kind of slow down. There's a time when they ramp up. There's a time when they pause button, because we don't know the timing of all of these prophecies. Do you see that as well? Sometimes there's proximity, there's acceleration, but then there's backing off and that type of thing?
I think I began sort of trying to discern the times, certainly in the 1980s, and maybe you did too, Jeff, but as I was doing it back then, and let's just take a little mental chart and put the 1980s alongside of the 2020s. There is no comparison. I got to say, there's no comparison. There were some things going on back then, and that's only 35 to 40 years ago. It's not like it's a century ago.
Right.
We all know everything sped up in 1948. Slam dunk, no brainer, sped up in 1948. But I think, I'm going to say something that may sound a little reckless here, and I don't mean it to at all, but I think fast forward came into gear only 4 years ago, again, with the pandemic. And I say that because people's mindset was different when that began. They began to be fearful. They began to look to government to protect them. The mentality was, Washington will protect me, or London will protect me. As it concerns health concerns again, but more specifically, the COVID pandemic, people were genuinely scared. And I'm not sure if they were all that scared 40 years ago and 30 years ago and 20 years ago. But when it comes to their loved ones dying, which happened for several years, still it's happening, but not at the rate it was 4 years ago, they started to listen, and I believe they started to look to government, and they began to trust government. Whoever thought intelligent people would trust government? Well, it was a brilliant plan, and it worked.
Yeah. Peace and safety.
Peace and safety, constant cries for that. And then you couple that with the fact that every notable survey or set of statistics keeps showing that as the younger generations are less and less biblically literate, They have a shakier worldview, a less and less of a biblical worldview. So it's that again is setting the stage for it. In other words, the enemy sees that his moment could be soon. So it's almost like he's tipping his hand a little bit, and he's rushing forward, and he's accelerating these evil things.
Absolutely. I think the key here is acceleration. And I'm sure that's what you gentlemen note as well. Everything is on overdrive. Everything is in a hurry now. We don't take our time for anything. And I think that the question that we need to ask is there coming another health crisis, call it a pandemic, whatever you want to call it, bird flu, disease X, something that nobody's thought of yet, something that's being cooked up in a lab. Is that on the horizon to kind of cement the deal that we are going to look to government for everything, but starting with our safety? Why would they let the pendulum stop now?
Right.
I don't think so.
I think that's key. That's key because you think about, we know that the rapture will be the ultimate crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
That will create the void, that will create the need for peace and for safety in the end. So it makes perfect sense that there has to be crises leading up to that to set the hook in, if you will, to society, to the global community. And, you know, as we saw with the pandemic, Jan and Todd, we saw a crisis which led to chaos, which led to fear. Obviously, there was the chaos of, people are going to be stacked 10 deep in the streets and that kind of thing. Which led to a calm, which government came in and said, oh, no, just shelter at home, wear a mask, do all these things. And, oh, by the way, and here's some stimulus money to keep you happy in the meantime. And then from that came compliance. And people, I guess we got to be, this is the new normal, they said. And so you've got the crisis, the chaos rather, the calm, the compliance, and ultimately the goal is control. And so that's where Satan, that's where Antichrist is headed. And as you said, through government being obviously more powerful, more influential, they have more tools at their disposal to make you do what they want you to do. That control, Jan, would you agree, is Satan's ultimate goal for planet Earth?
You know, my main prayer with that has been definitely it's fast forwarding things towards what we read in the tribulation. I personally don't see a full, complete collapse of anything until the first set of seal judgments.
Yes.
My prayer has been that God flipped the script on the enemy, and rather than them viewing it as a success, that I pray that God used it to wake up a lot of believers to the times that we're in, and that if something else like that comes across, there's going to be more people that will stand against it early on. I think we'll catch more flack. I think we'll catch more persecution. I think persecution's on the horizon if things keep heading in this direction. But hopefully one thing that did was wake people up to the deception that is out there from the highest levels of world governments on down.
Absolutely. Yes, and again, I think that it points to the importance of what's happening in November here in America, and the fact that we got to have a change of course here pretty soon, or else we're just not going to turn anything around, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that's okay in the long run.
It's hard to say, as much as we know that's the truth and that God's sovereign and all this is going according to his plan. Is still really, really tough for people to see. Including a few of these other ones you mentioned. We're definitely going out of order, but a couple more just to mention. There's a new level of calling evil good and good evil. We talked about that a little bit, Isaiah 5:20. You have one where you talk about artificial intelligence is being refined and definitely will be used in the mark of the beast. Absolutely, no doubt about that. One other one that really jumps out to me that you wrote is that too many churches are majoring in minors and furthering unsound doctrine. Could you speak to that for a moment?
Well, I have just done a radio program. It's not the first time on something that really troubles me, and some of your listeners will know the term the New Apostolic Reformation, and it's a form of extremism in the church that is really, really troubling. And I think it's troubling in that it's stealing young people from all over the world and getting them kind of hooked on experience in the church and signs and wonders and all of that. And that seems to be captivating a segment of the church today. It's very, very unsound. As a matter of fact, it's very dangerous. I've even featured on my radio program parents of a young woman who was almost kidnapped by this outfit in Redding, California, and what they did to brainwash her and convince her that her parents had abused her. Never happened. So I just see that growing, and we read, and we referenced it earlier, the suggestion that there's going to be end-time deception, strong delusion, and this is what I see moving heavily into many, many, many churches. But there's other things. I keep hearing, I get emails, my pulpit is suddenly woke. Well, you can do a whole program. What does that mean? What is a woke pulpit? We don't have time to go into it, but that's happening all across America and Canada. It's a politically correct type of a pulpit all of a sudden. So these things are happening exponentially, and right at a time where people in the pews need an explanation of what's happening in this world, clear and concise and to the point, and helping them to understand what on earth is happening, and not majoring in minors and going off on these extremes. But again, all of this is predicted. They're going to listen to the doctrine of demons, and there's going to be wolves among the flock. I just didn't think I'd see it this bad in my lifetime. And a lot of your listeners are saying amen. They're seeing it too.
That's true, Jan. And you know, it's interesting just to hear you say that. My mind immediately makes this observation about how, you know, Jesus told his Jewish brethren that in Matthew 24, that while they're hiding in the wilderness, if they hear, oh, the Christ is out here in the wilderness, or he's hiding in a room, he says, do not believe them. It's not the real Christ. And yet right now, what we're seeing with the New Apostolic Reformation, they're saying, hey, God's over here. Come over here and see him. We found him. We found the true serum, the true formula. Don't listen to them because it's not sound doctrine. It's not true teaching from the scriptures. It's a shiny object, if you will, but it's not God himself. And so we're experiencing in the church now, I think, some of that same spirit of deception that you talked about that the Jewish people are going to experience during the tribulation.
Yeah, exactly. First the church gets it, and then Israel in the tribulation, absolutely. I think, Jeff and Todd, what we're seeing in the church right now is very experience-driven, and that's never good, because it needs to be Bible-driven, not experience. But people are drawn to experience. It's, oh my goodness, it gives you goosebumps, and there's supposedly gold dust coming down on us, and that's all experience. And signs and wonders, but folks, it's not biblical.
Yeah, it really isn't. Like you said, it's experience driven, and there's such a heavy emphasis on emotion and feeling. Even if you can point to a crystal clear scripture that says the exact opposite, feelings and experience tend to trump biblical truth. And like you said, that is the most dangerous place to be in. And that coupled with the fact that the Bible talks about a great falling away, a great apostasy in the last days. So we're seeing the groundwork being laid for that right before our eyes.
For sure. Yeah. I think that started probably in the 1940s and then just picked up a decade after decade after decade. And a whole 2-hour program could be done on just what happened each decade, what new movement came in, and what church off their feet, and again, took the emphasis off of verse by verse, Bible driven, again, became signs and experience driven.
Yeah. Good word.
Well, let's read one more, or actually two more, and I'll let you pick which one is more heavy on your heart at the moment. But the aberrant is celebrated as normal and is touted as the standard for the world. And then another one is the violence of the days of Noah is upon us. That's 7, and that's number 10. But the aberrant is celebrated, and we're seeing violence increase everywhere.
Well, again, when we have the trans people being celebrated and heralded, and then just jumping to the lawlessness. Remember, I'm here in Minneapolis. I know lawlessness. I have a section of my beloved hometown that was burned to the ground in 2020 because of the George Floyd situation that happened in May of that year. And that part of Minneapolis will never come back, ever, 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 completely destroyed. But the point is, the violence and the lawlessness and the recklessness in spirit and action was something you had to see to believe. You cannot imagine. Now, we know it's happening in ancient capitals and distant lands, right? But to see it in your hometown, well, guess what, listeners? It may be coming to your hometown because the lawlessness is up like 5,000% in some places. So that is predicted for a last generation. And that alone should convince us that the spirit of Antichrist is just plain alive and well and poured out across the earth right now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So true.
It really is. And it's, again, Satan is launching a last days offensive against decency, against morality, obviously against the church. He has influence, obviously, in the pulpits, telling pastors, "Oh, you don't want to preach on that. That'll be unpopular," and that type of thing. And so, we're in a spiritual war, Jan. I mean, people forget that. We think we're at peace because we don't see bullets and bombs and blood. But guess what? The spiritual battle continues here in these last days. So kind of as we begin to kind of land the plane here a little bit, tell our listeners and our watchers right now, in light of this spiritual battle, what can the individual Christian do? How should this affect us in terms of how we view the world and the church? And then what can we do to help make a positive difference?
Well, the only thing that's going to change this scenario, I believe, is if more people indeed come to faith, and we all become salt and light and try to delay this decay. But I think, Jeff and Todd, the most important exhortation would be, let's go out and win the lost. We've talked here for several minutes about chaos and about corruption and the World Health Organization and the Antichrist. We just need more truth tellers out there, but in order to do that, a whole lot more people need to get saved. And that's, I think, that's an assignment every one of your listeners and mine can take seriously, take to the bank, so to speak, because that's why they're here. They're here to be salt and light and delay this decay. But first we need to get saved. We need to get born again. And all who call in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ will be saved. So don't delay, folks. We don't have much time left.
Amen.
Amen. And that's exactly how you end that article. Just to read the very last sentence in that article, you talk about the hope of seeing this. The good side is that it means the Lord's return is on the near horizon and that we have a job to do. And your last sentence, you said, that is why sharing the gospel should be the first order of business when it comes to being about our Father's business. Couldn't say it better. What a great way to end that article. Thank you so much, Jan.